Welcome to Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust, covering car culture and the automotive world with Shane Osborne, Brady Wright, and Steve, the producer, Johan. Let's see what's up this week.
Hey, and here is what's happening. Tuesday, January 21st, this is 2020. I love to say 2020.
2020.
2020, it just is. Seems very clear visually.
Yes.
That's not a great joke. I'll never use that one again.
No.
Brady Wright, Shane Osborne, Steve, the producer, Johan, joining millions of listeners on this 121st episode of Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust. Yes, we have been doing this 120 times previous. I can't believe we haven't got it figured out yet. We shouldn't need scripts at this point. We should just
121 weeks.
Ad-lib this whole thing at this point. You can find us, by the way, on iTunes and iHeart Podcasts. And by the way, I found out, well, I didn't find out, but I should mention, iHeartRadio, the iHeartRadio app is totally free. You don't have to, there's a sign up, but it only takes a second. And you can listen to it on your phone. You can listen to it on your computer. You can listen to it in your car if it's Bluetooth compatible. And it's really pretty good quality. So if you don't listen to us on Podomatic or you're listening to us on Facebook, grab the iHeart app because it's pretty cool. We're also on Spotify and, of course, Podomatic.com. Make sure you like and follow our Facebook page. All the latest shows are there, including the archives, where you can find the one show in 121 shows where I actually made a mistake. There's only one. You have to listen to all 121 of them to find it, but it is. I also want to welcome our newest sponsor, Witch Doctor Restoration. Let your project be a Witch Doctor project. Big, small jobs, you name it. Dream jobs, you got it. Call 425-626-4135, and the Witch Doctor will answer. Our first segment, as always, is Back to the Blacktop or Black to the Backtop. Hey, that's two. That's two mistakes. Ladies and gentlemen, you were here for the second time
because you're
I've
tapering
ever
off from
messed
a
up.
cold.
I am.
Brady.
You should see the drugs I took before I got in here, man. I got cold pills and cough drops, man. Steve Johan has automotive news and information as usual, and as usual today, it's all true.
Yes, it is. I got some interesting insights from Subaru. With the launch of Subaru's plug-in hybrid version of its Cross-Tech SUV for 2019,
cool.
Many within the auto industry thought Subaru was getting serious about electrifying its lineup. Well, hold on, not so fast.
Not so much.
It's far from certain how well they will sell, warned the automaker's CEO during a news briefing in Tokyo this week. Part of the problem for Subaru is that it's largely dependent on trends within the U.S. market,
right,
which accounts for 2/3 of its global sales.
Yeah.
And demand for battery-powered cars is pretty dismal here in the States, according to CEO Tomomi Nakamura.
Sure, that's easy for you to say.
The only EVs that are selling well are from Tesla, he says.
Yeah.
That said, Subaru officials outlined their plans to bring hybrids, plug-ins, and pure battery electric vehicles to the market, expecting they will account for 40% of its global sales by 2030.
So they're going to pay you to take them? Is that what?
Well, however, Subaru's push to electrify is being driven more by regulatory mandates than by consumer demand.
So somebody's getting paid.
Somebody is getting paid, and someone is having to be paid in order to sell their product. Now, speaking of Tesla Incorporated announced it has secured its next gigafactory in Germany near Berlin. The company has secured the property for the new plant for about $45 million. The new site will build the Model 3 beginning next year. This will allow them to better access to the European market, where fuel is much more expensive than here in the States.
Yeah, no kidding, by double or triple.
Oh, that's right. So I think electric's going to do well, especially in the tight little cities over there. They're really pushing mandates to keep cars out of there.
Sure.
Now, speaking of electric, Agenda 21 proponent and Democratic U.S. presidential hopeful Michael Bloomberg unveiled a plan on Friday to slash greenhouse gas emissions from transportation by making electric vehicles accessible to low-income families and improving public transit. Bloomberg, a media billionaire and former mayor of New York, has long fought to curb emissions, having been a special envoy of the United Nations on climate action. That's why I tell you guys, look up Agenda 21. Just do Agenda 21. You're going to find out, and that's actually the new one is Agenda 30. It comes from the UN, and you will understand why the cities and states you are living in are doing what they are doing. It's a master plan to control our lives under the banner of protecting the environment. Just do a search. That being the case, Bloomberg plans to call for all new U.S. cars to be electrified by 2035, reductions of diesel pollution, which electric trucks and buses, and with electric trucks and buses, improve access to public transport, and building of high-speed rail. So I got a great idea for Mr. Bloomberg.
Oh, no, here we go.
Take his billions of dollars that he doesn't need and go out and buy those battery-powered cars for all the poor and down-and-trodden that need those electric cars. Give the government your money to build better transit systems. Keep your hands off the taxpayers' dollars. I am tired of this whole big billionaire guys telling me what to do when they've got the money to actually deal with some of these problems.
Well, the hole in the plan, at least from my standpoint, is it'd be really good, according to Bloomberg, if all the low-income families had electric cars, which cost 3 times what a regular car costs. So how are these guys going to buy an electric? Come on. Tax credits won't do it. Tax credits won't do it.
No, but that's why I'm saying he's got the billions. No one needs to live on billions. He can turn around and do some of this good environmental cause stuff. So we'll see. Stay tuned. We'll give you more information on that. Now, here is something I want you to be aware of. How money is made on Wall Street. Tesla
they just print it, don't they?
Yes, they do. Well, Tesla Incorporated said on Monday there is no unintended acceleration problems in its vehicles, as it responded to a petition to the U.S. safety regulation to investigate a recall of around 500,000 of the company's electric cars over the alleged defect. On Friday, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration said it would review the petition and released a redaction version that said Tesla vehicles experienced unintended acceleration at rates far exceeding other cars on the roads.
Wait a minute. They recalled almost 500,000 cars because of an unintended acceleration fault. And Tesla is now saying it's not real.
No, here's the real thing.
That's what it sounds like.
No, the petition urged the agency to recall all Tesla vehicles, the Model S, Model X, Model 3, beginning in 2013. Tesla said the petition was completely false, brought on by forwarded by a short seller. Brian Sparks, who is currently shorting Tesla stocks, according to CNBC, submitted the petition in September. Over the past several years, we've discussed the National Highway, that's a long, NHTSA. The majority of complaints alleged in the petition come from this guy. He wants to benefit from,
he's got an axe
stocks
to
are going to tank. He's going to
make
out like a bandit.
Tesla. That's what it is.
Yeah, he wants to make hundreds of millions.
The thing that gets me is why is this taking up space in the news feed,
Because I want people to know that
I'm not saying why are you doing it. I'm just saying why is there so much ink being given to this guy? Because it's really an internal thing.
Yeah, it is. But we are hoping that there is no recall, and maybe this Brian guy goes along with.
Lawyers will have conversations,
yes,
and this
they
will all
will
get swept up.
Now, Toyota revealed Friday it has a plan to shift production of its popular Tacoma mid-sized pickup to Mexico from the U.S. as part of a larger reallocation of resources during the next 2 years. The move is part of a $13 billion, now get this, investment plan for its U.S. operations.
Well, sure.
How do you invest into U.S. operations when you're actually divesting and going to Mexico to build the trucks?
Well, they've already got factories in Mexico, and Mexico's labor is way cheaper. So that's what they're doing. They're taking the money that they would have to spend in the States, ramping up the Mexican production. It's actually it's a financial thing. It's not so much a losing jobs thing. The people in America are going to make different cars. That's what it is.
Well, we'll see. They also said that our Toyota AI Ventures subsidiary is investing $394 million in Joby Aviation to develop its electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicle, basically a electric helicopter air taxi service. Can you imagine?
I'd buy that.
Why not? But they've already got helicopters out there. This is going to be an electric.
But the reason they don't use them in town mostly is because they make a hellacious amount of noise.
Yeah,
electric ones might not be quite so loud.
It'll be interesting. Yeah. It'll be interesting.
Well, thanks for tuning in. This is not the end of this, I guarantee you. Coming up on the Windshield View, our guest is Marv Nielson from the Washington State Hot Rod Hall of Fame. All of that and more on Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust.
My mind's out of gear, and my heart's in overdrive. I've everything to fear, I ain't never been more alive.
Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust is back with the first half of the Windshield View, and this week we're talking with the driving force behind the Washington State Hot Rod Hall of Fame. Welcome, Marv Nielson. And I just want to say, from the last segment, you might have thought that it was a financial show, but it's not. It's still Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust. We're talking about all things automotive and car culture. So, Marv, great to have you in here today.
Great to be here with you guys. I'm anticipating learning something today.
Boy, if we can teach you something, that'll be a feather in our cap. Considering that I've only made 2 mistakes the entire time we've done the show. Now I get to be a teacher, too. That's just marvelous. So, the Washington State Hot Rod Hall of Fame. Now, when you say that, it sounds, pretty imposing, and I know that it's a sort of a branch of the National Hot Rod Hall of Fame, but tell me, how did the Washington State chapter get started? What's some of the history of the organization itself?
It began with the efforts of Walt and Joni Kaplan back in '86. They wanted to do something to honor those men and women that do something for hot rods and classic cars and so on. So those were the days of Terry C. Home, Dick Page, and a lot of the good old boys. And they were all in there up until 1985 when medical issues and problems manifested itself, and they had to give it up. So a gentleman by the name of Pat D'Ambrosio, said, let's start this back up again.
Sure.
So he made that decision in 2006. So the first inducted member was inducted in 2007.
Nice.
There was a total of 27 members in the first segment of it. And let's see, where are we at here? I guess I don't have that number.
Oh, you mean the total number?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I know that if you go to the website, by the way, Washington State Hot Rod Hall of Fame, if you do a search, you'll get to the web page and the Facebook page, and you can find all of this information. We will, by the way, link all of that stuff to the show page so people can get to it and see it. But on there's a whole bunch of background information about the organization, including a list of all of the inductees year by year, and I think all of the car clubs that got inducted year by year.
Yes.
And I'm sure that somewhere in there's probably a total, but I didn't, look for that particularly. I've been coming to the event for the last 4 or 5 years. And the thing that gets me about it, and I'm sure you've got input on this from other people besides me, you think that, as a culture, we're so kind of inured to award shows because you see, the Golden Globes and the Oscars and all that kind of stuff. This is really a group of people who are all together pretty casually to promote a sport that they really enjoy and love. And it's not flashy, it's professionally done, but it's not flashy or, there's no tuxedo. I don't think there's a tuxedo that shows up. Is there?
No.
Nobody has a tuxedo. Lance probably has one, but I doubt that he wears it. He'd get laughed out of the place. But yeah, the clubs show up usually in pretty good response, and the individuals every year who get inducted for whatever category, we'll talk about those in a minute. Just a whole bunch of really great guys with, I think, maybe 1 or 2 driving characteristics behind them. One is they really love the sport, and they've spent a lot of time and sometimes, in some cases, a lot of money promoting the sport to everybody without really a thought of getting anything back except just enjoyment of it. Does that sound about?
That's correct. But in the resumes that are sent to us, we don't go out and look for these people. Friends send in a resume. I think this guy would be good in the Hot Rod Hall of Fame, but he's not limited to being a car guy. We like to hear that they do charity work in their community. And they're involved in the community. So it's the whole big picture of everything is what really gets us going.
Yeah.
So, Marv, what I was wondering is, I've not been to this, and I love Hall of Fame type things. Is this strictly for street rodding, or is it for does it include some of our drag racing and all that kind of thing? Or is there another organization that handles all the racing? Because the Northwest has a rich history of drag racing and just overall racing up here. You got many different tracks, along with the hot rod and classic car and that kind of thing.
Right. It's the one that comes to mind right off the bat is Herm Peterson, the Northwest Terror.
Oh, yeah.
He was inducted a couple of years ago, and what a wonderful fella he is.
Yep.
And I actually got a couple of his old blown-up pistons that I made some trophies out of.
Nice.
So, yeah. But we don't limit it just to, somebody goes out and buys a hot rod and he's in the Hall of Fame. That doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But it's the hot rodders are such generous, likable, wonderful people, and we like to spread it around. There's drag people, there's custom cars, there's hot rod builders. Look at Dick Page, the very first one inducted into the Hot Rod Hall of Fame.
Who is Dick Page? Because I do not know who this man is.
He was the man. He built cars, built hot rods, built motorcycles, and unfortunately, he went to the big garage in the sky a little too early. But just a wonderful guy. He taught car shop in I don't remember the name of the school, but just a wonderful fella. And his name, every time you talk about hot rods, Dick Page's name comes up.
Now, but what era was this? I mean, that he was really in his prime. When was his golden era of building? Because I moved down here in '80 and not really heard of him.
70s and 75 to 80, and he had a shop in Tacoma, and he did a lot of exotic painting of cars and drag cars and streamliners, and nothing was limited for him. He just did everything. So did it well.
So
we had occasion to talk about Dick Page on the show because one of our most listened to shows ever was the story from the old Car Nut Book 2 that David Dickinson compiled about the Hot Rod Lincoln.
That's right.
Charlie Ryan's car and everything. Well, Dick Page was one of the guys who was instrumental in rebuilding that car once they found it and realized that it needed that. He, I think, probably ramrodded most of the work and the restoration that went together on that car. And the neat thing about it, now I'm not remembering the names of some of the other guys, but they're all people in the Northwest. Probably most of them are in the Hall of Fame at this point.
Well, I'm thinking Jim Green must have been in there.
They didn't charge a nickel for doing that. They did it for love of the sport.
That's right.
And that's I think that's the kind of thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
Just because it was a car and a story and a legend that sort of needed to be retold, and that's the kind of thing that made him what. And that wasn't all that long ago. That was in the late 90s, 2000s, right in there. Yeah. So he was still active at that point.
But I'm thinking, I grew up, I came down here in 1980, and Jim Green's was like the place to go to have your car worked on, your engine specially, and he was heavily into the monster truck stuff and the tractor pull, that kind of thing. So I would have thought he had been inducted. Am I correct?
Yes, yeah. He has been inducted.
How about Pat Austin?
No, he did not. Sometimes there's an issue that comes up, and we had an issue where we asked one fella if he wanted to be into the Hot Rod Hall of Fame, and he says, "What's in it for me?"
Oh, yeah.
Well, that ended that conversation right then.
Sure.
Right. I got it.
So in the Hot Rod Hall of Fame is a kind of a blanket statement. There's several different categories that you could be nominated to be in. You got quite a number of different awards. What are some of those?
Well, we have the cream of the crop is the induction of the members, of course, but we have community service award.
Right.
We had a new award last year of a 17-year-old girl from Fall City that said, "Mom, I want to draw some pictures of cars." And she went in the drawer, got a bunch of colored pencils, and drew some absolutely stunning. I mean, you would think they're photographs.
Yeah.
We featured her last year, and one of her etchings was donated to the auction.
Yeah, I saw her there last year, and she was amazingly talented. You bet.
So we have that and other different awards.
Yeah. Are we getting down to where we need to take a break?
We are right at our break.
Hold that thought. We will take up this exact subject when we come back on the next section of Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust.
I Racket Vehicle City.
And we're also back with the second half of the Windshield View. And Marv Nielson is with us from the Washington State Hot Rod Hall of Fame. And we were talking just before the break about some of the different categories that people can get nominated to be in the Hall of Fame, as well as some of the individual awards. A lot of them have to do with charitable giving and specialty stuff. And you were talking about that girl from last year who was the artist, which is kind of cool. What else constitutes some of the awards?
Well, we go on from there to one of the other things that's happening there is the scholarship program.
Right.
And that's generated mostly by car clubs and individual people. That I think we had 8 people last year that received a $2,000 scholarship to finish their studies. A lot of those kids weren't able to do that without that scholarship. So we have let me go back and say there's what was the gal that wrote for Cruisin' Magazine?
Oh, right. Yeah, you're going to ask me, and I don't know. I mean, I know who she is, and I can see, but
Barton or something like that.
Yeah.
Journalist of the Year and
yeah.
things like that. So we encompass everybody.
Yeah, and well, you should. Now, there's also, I mean, you are a 501c3, so the sponsorship, the scholarship thing is a big deal. There's an art award.
Right, the auction, it's actually an international type auction. We've been getting artwork from Sweden and Yugoslavia, and all of those are auctioned off that night.
Right.
And the proceeds are given to our charity of choice.
Are these car arts or just any kind of art?
Mostly car art.
Oh,
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff like this young gal is I can't get over it. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's just a spur of the moment deal.
Well, I know that one of the regular attendees down there, somebody from the LeMay collection at Marymount, almost always shows up at the event. And a couple of years ago, this individual was looking at several of the kinetic art pieces that were down there, stuff that moved and everything. And she said, these would be really wonderful. They've got a garden down there with all kinds of automotive art in it, and most of it moves somewhere or another. And I'm sure that she made some contacts down there for some of the people who'd brought that stuff down because she was fascinated by it.
Yeah.
I spent some time talking with her. I was trying to get her on the show, but we've never connected. But
so I want to back up a little bit because it started out with the idea in the 80s, and then it stopped, and then it started up in 2007. And what is the is it a charitable organization basically to raise money for good causes, and then kind of around honoring different individuals? Because like when I think of the Hot Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you think of people who were cutting edge and who did things that basically transform music, and or who gave so much to the music world. And so talk to us a little bit about that aspect of it, because it sounds like people have to nominate who's being inducted. But talk to us about kind of the well-rounded, the whole aspect. Because, you got this young girl, but she hasn't been around that long. I want to really kind of focus a little bit on people who've been around for 20, 30-plus years that have really made a difference.
Well, it was kind of funny. I'll tell you a little story about the first banquet we had was held in McCrory's in Seattle, and we had no idea what they were doing. And so they called up Jose and Ciso at Triple X.
Yeah.
Said, say we're going to give Marv an award. Would you mind being there? And he said, sure. So then he called me up, and he says, we're going to give Jose an award. Would you mind being there? So guess what? Jose was the first one inducted into the new Hot Rod Hall of Fame.
Nice.
And I was the second.
Very cool.
Very good.
And you spoke for each other.
Yes.
Well, and Marv...
So did he give you the $20? Is that...
I get all the French fries I can have.
Marv, I need you to step back a little bit because I don't know anything about you other than you're in here, you're a nice gentleman. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this position.
Well, I started... we wanted to have a car show. I started hanging out down at the Triple X car show, and I had a 57 Chevy that I had just purchased and was working on it. And there'd be a couple of cars down there, and I would pull down there, and I'd pull around behind and park in the back, and pretty soon they'd come around and say, come on, park with us. And I did that. So they said, well, this was in 96. So they said, let's put on a car show. And the first show we put on had 7 cars. The next year we put on another one, and there was 21 cars. And we had one show 2 years ago. There was over 1,000 cars there.
Yeah.
So
What's the name of that car show?
that was the import show. That particular one. So that's
Well, Jose
24 years now
Yeah.
that I've done it every Sunday,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and 33 car shows this year.
Wow.
Well, Jose is a pretty smart guy, and you are too, of course. But he understands that if you provide a venue for these things, then the sport grows. And of course, everybody eats at his restaurant, so there's nothing stupid about that. But pretty much any weekend from March to about November, you can go out to the Triple X, and any Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, there's a show there all the time. He's done a terrific job promoting the sport, and he does. I mean, it's Corvettes, it's hot rods, it's pro stocks, it's imports, it's Volkswagens, it's you name it. All the clubs pretty much have a show out there at one point or another.
That's correct.
Yeah,
And you've been part of putting on shows out there?
This is my 24th year.
yeah.
Wow. So you are a sbig show guy. And, I mean, when you think about it, you got the Cruisin' Colby up here in the north end, and you've got the Snohomish Car Show, and then the Edmonds Car Show, the Greenwood Car Show. And then what's unique about the Triple X is they're going on all the time.
Right.
And they're just, hey, you don't even have to think about it. You just head down the Triple X on the weekend, and Saturday or Sunday, you're going to run into a car show.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that's what makes it very unique, is you got something going there all the time, whereas the other ones, they're annual, once a year, big events type thing. Whereas you can just go down there, grab a burger, and walk around and look at a lot of really cool cars.
Yeah.
And we have a Saturday night cruise also, depending on the weather, of course. But then on Sunday, you never know what car show it's going to be. I mean, we have a schedule, but 1 week it's Chryslers, 1 week it's Ford, it's hot rods.
Yeah.
So every time you go down there, there's something new, something different.
Yep.
So that's what I like.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And so how long have you been into cars yourself?
I got my first Model A when I was 15.
So that's 10, 12 years.
You're so kind.
Yeah, Marv's like, all right, good. Here's the $10. Yeah.
I turned 79 a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Oh, you look a young 79.
Well, and so many people, and I guess it's almost something that we should be concerned about. So many people our age, our generation, they've been into cars for a long time. There's a lot of young people coming up now who don't have, of course, the history just because of chronology, but also they're not getting taught. The car culture these days is real different from what it was when, in the 50s and 60s and so on. Part of that is just styling exercises. People don't wait for the next new model like they used to because they're kind of the same. And yet the technology has advanced so far that it's easy to get involved with the machine. It's just a different sort of a look thing, which I think is part of why the older cars, the hot rods, if you will, or even the classics, are so popular, so much fun, because you just don't see them as much. And, now, of course, as time goes by, it's going to be harder to find some of those older cars because there's just some attrition and metal fatigue that's making them go away.
The good news is this, is that I tend to spend a lot of time on YouTube, Netflix, and what have you, and there's hundreds of shows dedicated around the world of automotive, but be it barn finds, dirt finds, digging things out of whatever finds, and then there are these guys that, people that just buy a car and start tearing into it and modifying it, and then there's racer guys, there's a sport guys, the import guys, and they all have their YouTube, and they got thousands of followers on each one of these, and you can learn, and a lot of times you're learning as you're going along, you've got your learning stuff, and I'm finding all these younger people are totally getting into this, so the sport is not going away.
No.
They might not be able to afford a classic $60,000, but they can afford a newer car, or they're getting into the 80s cars because that's affordable. And I mean, my son's got an 89 Crown Vic, and he's keeping it limping along, and he prefers that over the other one that he had, which was a 2001 Taurus. And there's a lot of young people that we've met through the show and others that are getting into it, and they want to stick with it too. So, and trucks have become very, very big as well. Have you been seeing the same thing, Marv?
Yes. And what's intriguing to me is I have several people that have kids in my neighborhood, and they're always coming over to my garage. I have 3 of them myself. I have a 28 Model A Roadster pickup with a hopped-up flathead. I have a 37 Ford with a Chevy small block, and the creme de la creme is the 57 Chevy.
Oh, yes.
And they'll come up and bang on the door and say, "What are you making today?"
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm taking the intake manifold off and putting another one on." "Well, can I watch?"
Sure.
There you go.
That's how they learn. That's how they learn to want to be a hot rodder. I like that.
That's great stuff.
That's how I grew up. My neighbors were doing it. My friends up the street were doing it. My dad helped me rebuild my engine for just my Mazda 71. He did a dune buggy. Everybody just watched everybody. And then you had Auto Shop.
Yep.
And do you guys do any work to support the auto shops in the area for kids, high schools?
We haven't got to that yet, but I believe it's in the future somewhere if I can hang on.
Well, the scholarships, have a certain amount to do with that,
right.
and they are very valuable, no doubt. Everybody that's in the last, several years that I've been going to the event, all of the recipients of the scholarships are so universally grateful for just the help that they get.
That's
because
right.
it's something that they want to do, and a lot of them don't have the money. It's not a cheap program.
To clarify that a little bit also, they are all of the scholarship recipients are in some sort of automotive program.
Right.
Oh, very good.
Yeah,
right.
All of them are.
Excellent.
And it's because they don't have enough money to finish a quarter or something
Right.
like that, and the college makes that decision and says, "Hey, let's give it to Billy over there."
Mhm.
Hey, that's good with me.
Yep.
So that's good.
Yeah, it sure is. I do want to make sure we get time to talk about the website before we go crazy. The Washington State Hot Rod Hall of Fame.com. So all of that .com is the name of the website, but if you do a search, you'll find it. And on the website, of course, is all about the organization, all about the awards, all about the board and the team and the staff that do such great work and the volunteers, and the complete list of all of the awards, all of the inductees. The criteria for being inducted, I think, is in there, plus the car clubs that got inducted in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on.
Right.
So it's really, it's very, very complete. And we will post that up with the link to the show when we do that. And obviously, we'll send you a link to the show if you want to, put it on the website. That'd be great too. But people will definitely find out.
And Marv, I wanted to ask you: do you float where the awards banquets are held every year?
We had a couple different places in the beginning. We went, like I said, at McCrory's. Then we went to the there's one down Tacomatone restaurant down there. I can't remember what it was. Then we went to Everett a couple of years. We went down to LeMay's at Nancy's place a couple of years.
Yeah.
But this one we're doing actually right down the street here at the Linwood Convention Center.
Yeah, it's a real nice facility.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah. And they cater a pretty good meal, too.
Anything we want, they've knocked themselves out. So.
Plus,
and there's plenty of parking. It's
Yes.
right on I-5, easy to get to from all points in between.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the farthest away that people, because it says Washington State, how far do people come from to be awarded?
Well, we've had several people come from Spokane. We had a person inducted last year.
Great.
Many people from the Bremerton area, and so we're looking now at possibly trying to go to the middle of the state somehow, because we are the state of Washington.
Sure.
And because if you go to something up in the far corner, you're not going to get anybody. So you have to
actually,
make it accessible.
you might be surprised. There's a pretty rich community in the Spokane, Airway Heights, Okanagan area, and there's another pretty strong bunch down in the Tri-Cities and Wenatchee and so on. So you might be surprised who'd come over for an award show.
We're probably going to end up doing that one of these days here.
Yeah.
We haven't ironed it all out
I'll
yet,
share
but,
my Rolodex with you.
All right, sounds good.
Now, are you looking for new volunteers to get involved with helping you make this happen?
Not necessarily. We have a board of directors. There's 7 people on it. So when we get and then person that they want inducted in there, we pass it around, and
Sure.
they will say yay or nay, and that's how it's decided. So,
Nice. Well, so if you're listening and you think you might want to have somebody inducted into the Hall of Fame, you can go to the website. You can send up a bio, and who knows, you might be the next one that gets the all-expense-paid trip. Well, you're going to pay for it yourself.
You got to pay for
to
it.
Linwood. Hey, you are listening to the greatest automotive info show in the known world, and I want to just thank Marv Nielson for coming down and talking with us. I know we were going to have an additional guest tonight. She had a family emergency, but Helen Meadows is another one of the driving forces in the Hot Rod Hall of Fame. But Marv, I appreciate you drove all the way up here from Issaquah in the rain and sleet and leftover snow. And we're sure glad to have you. Thanks a bunch.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Hey, we got a whole bunch of cool stuff still to come. We've got a great hot rod story you can tell your friends, and a trivia question that is better than any trivia question we have ever done. This show is coming up next on Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust.
It's time for Cars Confidential, and we're back with a story from Lance Lambert again this week. So what is up this week, Brady?
Well, Lance has been very forthcoming. I had to twist his arm
to
a
no
lot.
good, right? Because a lot of his stories, he's kind of getting in on the gray area there.
Well, personal memories, there's no guaranteeing that they're going to be family friendly.
If I ever write a book, I think, I'll have to be very careful about that.
Edit some of that stuff?
Yes.
Well, this one could be one. I think the statute of limitations has run out on this one, but nevertheless, this one is called Blissful Idiots. And this is going to be a painful story for the environmentalists or car lovers to read. Now, at the time of this adventure, I was only 19 years old, and like many 19-year-old people, I was a blissful idiot. Despite that, the entire incident was a heck of a lot of fun. One of my crowd's favorite pastimes was to go brush shaving in the woods on the outskirts of Tacoma. Now, brush shaving is when you buy a junker, take it into the woods, and proceed to drive over or through as many obstacles as possible.
Jeez. Cheap cars, I guess.
I guess.
Jeez.
Favorite targets were big bushes or small trees. Hey, it was 1966, and we didn't care much about green things back then. Which reminds me of a minor side story. You drive across central Washington, and very often you'll run into tumbleweeds blowing across the road.
Yes.
They're a lot of fun to hit. At about 60, they just go puff. Now, 500 of them is not so much fun, but one or two, it's kind of fun. Anyway, Keith, his friend, had just acquired a 1954 Oldsmobile 88 two-door hardtop, strong pressure, and a few beers from his friends convinced him that this car was the next candidate for use in the local defoliation. Off Keith and I drove to Bob and Daryl's garage for the proper modification of the Olds. Following behind was Bob, who must have found the trail we left interesting. Keith and I started to throw out of the window anything we could unscrew, break off, or tear off from the interior, all while driving down the street. I can see this.
Jeez.
Yeah. Out flew radio dials, sun visors, dash knobs, ashtrays, rear view mirrors, glove box doors, anything else we could break loose. Like I said, we were blissful idiots. Proper preparation included soldering 6 beer cans to the hood to look like simulated carburetor stacks and brazing the doors closed. We didn't want the doors flying open during our jaunt. A pair of floor jack stands were dismantled and used to raise the car's height considerably.
Oh, my gosh, that's an interesting way of thinking.
Yeah, well, clearly they didn't want to drive it very long after this.
No.
We didn't want the doors. Oh, yeah. A can of fluorescent orange spray paint topped it off with a very striking set of flames on the side of the car. The Olds was a sight to behold. The following day was a sunny Saturday and a perfect one for us to carry out our mission. 6 of us split up and climbed into the Oldsmobile and into my 56 Ford Country sedan station wagon. We took the Ford along because the high probability that the Olds would be meeting its end that day was not lost on us. We crossed the Narrows Bridge and headed to an area north end of Tacoma Industrial Airport. This wooded area was new brush-shaving territory for us. We arrived, and Bob climbed into the driver's seat of the doomed hardtop. The rest of us climbed in, and off we went. Say it's 6 guys in this car.
That's a big car.
Yeah, but they're all riding as they're driving through the boonies. We had only been crashing through the brush for a few minutes when Bob took aim at a small tree. He failed to realize one thing as he bore down upon the tree. It was big enough to hide a large stump behind it. That car was traveling at 15 or 20 miles an hour, fast enough that the impact was hard and surprising. The front was smashed in and the hood was buckled. We untangled ourselves from each other and realized that no one was hurt. We started laughing uproariously. When the flames started coming out of the engine compartment, let me say it again. When the flames started coming out of the engine compartment, we stopped laughing and tried getting out. However, the doors, being brazed shut, was a serious deterrent. Out of the windows we bailed. Now we wondered what to do. A smashed and burning 54 Oldsmobile laid before us. I did the only proper thing in this situation. I decided that we needed a bigger fire, so I grabbed a tire iron and broke off the gas tank plug, pouring out gas underneath the car.
Oh, jeez.
Yes, you guessed it. The gas ignited, and we now had a much bigger fire.
Jeez.
The
At
trouble
19? God, these guys hadn't grown up yet.
Yeah. The trouble was that the surrounding vegetation also began burning. The blissful idiots then realized that perhaps this afternoon's entertainment had gotten out of control. I jumped into the Ford and headed to the airport to call the fire department. This is before cell phones, of course. The airport's fire department firefighters had already spotted the fire and were on the way to put out what they thought was a crashed and burning airplane. We watched them put out the fire as we backed up slowly, climbed onto the Ford, and made a quick exit. A few days later, the police knocked on Keith's front door. He confirmed that he was the owner of the car. Fortunately, the police's main concerns seemed to be having the burned-out Hulk removed rather than the apprehension of the brush-shaving pyromaniacs. Keith called a junkyard, and they took away the remains of the poor old Rocket 88. We heard no more from any authorities. All we were left with was the feeling that maybe a few bad choices had also been made, and the worst choice by me. I was lucky we didn't get hurt in the woods, suffer from burns, or start a serious forest fire. We were also lucky that the authorities didn't put us in jail. Did we learn our lesson? Probably not. A few weeks later, we tried to blow up the engine on Bob's 47 Chrysler, but that's another story.
Jeez. Yes.
So, as you said, some of these stories
Wow.
sort of cross the line, and this is from Fenders, Fins, and Friends, Confessions of a Car Guy, and you know, as we've said before, Lance is the host of television's Vintage Vehicle Show. He's got a website. If you go to vintagevehicleshow.com, you will see this. You will also see links to the books, Fenders, Fins, and Friends, and Gears, Grins, and Gasoline. Lance is most lately becoming a storyteller, and he goes out to various community meetings and you know, gatherings and tells stories that probably have nothing to do with cars.
No.
He's pretty good at it. I'll give him credit.
He is, you know.
But this one probably isn't one that he's going to be sharing with the group at, you know, Aunt Edna's Knitting Circle.
I have stories of getting high centered on stumps and having
I'm glad you
have
said centered there.
having people lift off the rear end
Yes.
of the vehicle so you could get back down. I had that happen a couple times, and let's just say when I had my dad's dune buggy, the one and only time he let me go out, I ended up getting 4 of my friends. We all went out to a sand pit, and we went to a couple sand pits, and one of them happened to be, we were turning around, and we kind of got high-centered on a stump. Now, it had a skid plate, so fortunately it was okay.
Sure,
we got it off, and we could lift it off because it was lightweight. But it had bent the little frame that held up the canopy at the top. One of my friend's knees came up. I brought it home. Dad looked at that, and he said, "Son, I'm going to sell this." And that was the end of the dune buggy. So that was a very sad day because I realized what a idiot I was for having done that.
And blissful at that.
Well, yeah, we had a lot of fun.
No doubt.
And then I ended up doing a lot of that with my own car. So.
Yeah, we actually pushed a car off a cliff one time. However, in our defense, both the cliff and the car were already there when we got there.
Oh, okay.
It was an abandoned car.
It was an abandoned car.
Yeah. And there was nothing in it. You know, it was full of bullet holes because it's been there forever. We just decided it'd be funny to push it off the cliff. And it wasn't anywhere near as fun as you think it's going to be because it really doesn't do much except bounce and then stop.
Did it have tires, or were they all kind of
shot
off and everything?
As I recall, there were something that had once been tires.
Yes.
But there weren't, you know, they
rims pretty much.
It was a lot of effort to push it off. I think we ended up finally levering it with broken trees, you know, and pushing it from the back.
Was this like an area where you kids would hang out and somebody had taken?
It was up on one of the Forest Service roads on the way up towards Stevens Pass.
Oh, okay. We had a little area called Dead Man's Hill, and it was a whole.
There's a Dead Man's Hill in every town.
Yes, I think there is.
I'm sure of it.
It was a whole area that was trails, and we'd ride our motorcycles
Yeah.
and bicycles, and people would bring in their tractors and cars, and
Right.
it was basically all rural area because it was surrounded by the school in one area and then houses, but it was like over a couple hundred acres of woods and fields. Crazy stuff happened up there that it's amazing that more things didn't get destroyed than they did. So,
well, for those people who have hit me up on Facebook and asked, we're doing stuff from Lance Lambert. Yeah, because David Dickinson has been real kind over the last 2 years. Let us use his book, the old Car Nut books. But, we thought we'd do something a little different. And Lance said, oh, gosh, no, never read my stories for an audience of 1.5 million. So we'll do some of those for a while. We'll be back with David's book sooner or later.
You're an El Camino man, only you can understand.
Welcome back. This is Around the Wheel. This is where we talk about upcoming events and the weekly trivia question. And I will give you now advance notice of the Washington State Hot Rod Hall of Fame Awards Dinner coming in September of 2020 at the Linwood Convention Center. Specific date to be announced later. But you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen, because Marv said, talk about it. Because we will.
And that's in September. But
it is. We got plenty of time.
Yeah, but it's nice to bring people in like Marv because he's been doing this for a long time.
It's a great event. You got to come this year. You got to come.
I'm going to be there.
It's a win. Shane went last year, and it's a great event. So this particular week, we had our trivia question from last week, which was a tough one. It was a difficult one because I worded it kind of strangely, but what it was California has been responsible for a lot of big numbers when it comes to cars, sales, and everything like that. But California is responsible for 1/7 of something that has to do with cars every year. And because I worded it that way...
The sale of Teslas?
Well,
1/7 of them
it actually is the sale of something. But Wayne Gasly from Terre Haute, Indiana, sent me a Facebook Messenger thing. He says, "I think if it's what you're talking about, I think it's the sale of autos and trucks. 1/7 of the new autos and truck sales in the U.S. are sold in Southern California."
Wow.
And he's absolutely right. That was it. And he must have had to really scrounge Google to get that one because it's a pretty obscure stat, but sure enough. So Wayne Gasly wins the picture with the horsepower chrome and rust barn find dust for this week. And you, too, could win your very own if you know the answer to this trivia question. The very first method used to catch speeders in New York City, and I'm picking New York just because it's funny, but not because it's the first time that you ever used it. Because, see, the first cars didn't have steering wheels. They had levers. You had a tiller, basically. And so they didn't go very fast. But there was always somebody who wanted to go faster than whatever the speed limit was. 5 miles an hour, somebody's going to do 6. But this was before police cars. So New York City Police Department came up with a brilliant plan for how to pursue speeding motorists.
Oh, wow.
In 1898.
Whoa.
This was the first episode or first incident of this particular thing. If you know what it is, you can email us at contactus@horsepowerchromeandrust.com. You can go to the Facebook page and put in an entry or an answer. You can do a Facebook Messenger to us, and we will absolutely. This is the kind of question that Nathan Lipinski will know.
Yes,
he's just exactly that kind of a guy.
He is always saying good things about us, so thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, he always tosses stuff in.
You're a super guy.
Yeah.
And you got to think about this. For ever and ever, for thousands of years, people came into towns mostly walking, and then maybe on burros, maybe on horses later on.
Yes.
Then in chariots.
Dinosaurs.
Chariots during Rome and others, and then later on wagons, and then wagons started coming. And then they started hitching multiple horses to wagon.
Yeah.
And so you can get pretty fast with a wagon with multiple horses, but I don't know of anybody ever dying from an injury of horses running into each other or anything
sure.
like that.
It happened all the time.
You got to think it did.
Oh, of course. Yeah, there were.
I did hear that in
incidents
Seattle,
that happened, sure.
that the potholes were so big in the early days of Seattle that they were so deep that actually horses would get trapped in them and die.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, they're big enough that you could have a separate zip code in some of them.
I mean, they were huge.
Yeah.
And they weren't just a couple feet deep. They were like a horse's heads deep.
Yeah,
So,
the public works department in the city of Seattle back around the turn of the last century was not well known for road maintenance. They didn't kind of care. Plus,
half
of course,
of
you
it
got
was
the whole story
made
of-
on the flats.
Yeah, well, of course, Seattle's built on a tide flat, so
Yes,
that's
it
part
is.
of the problem. Hey, we appreciate you coming by this week. Marv Nielson was our guest from the Hot Water Hall of Fame. What a great time it was talking with him. Thanks for liking and following our website and our Facebook page. And again, thanks to Marv for stopping off. For Steve Johan and Shane Osborne, I am Brady Wright saying keep your eyes on the road, your hands on the wheel, and your foot to the floor. Next week, we trip the lights on another Horsepower Chrome and Rust.